In this video, I'm going to show you 3 ways that mainstream career advice actually misleads the minority job seeker. Career and job search advice discriminates. Just ask Emmanuel. Emmanuel's a newcomer to Canada. He was looking for part-time work while doing his master's degree. That way he'd get that sought-after Canadian work experience. He had a killer resume. He applied every framework and best practice that he researched online, yet he couldn't even land an interview. Time after time, he was screened out. This is Career Interrupted. I'm Shauna, and I want to help you get the job of your dreams, no matter your race or where you're from. This is the career channel for professionals who value diversity and inclusion. If that sounds like your thing, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell to get notified of any new videos. As a minority, it's important to understand that mainstream, generic career advice might not apply to you. Your experience as a minority job seeker is different. Just ask Emmanuel. A lot of the career and job search advice out there actually discriminates against you and your unique experience. Advice that dismisses your unique challenges and your unique experiences sets you up for disappointment and doesn't help you to be successful in your job search at all. I'm not saying this is intentional, but discrimination is often unintentional. The reason I made this video is to empower the minority job seeker to think more critically about the advice that they're consuming when it comes to job search and career and everything else for that matter, and consider that maybe that advice wasn't built for you or by someone who understands the unique challenges that you face. We're going to walk through 3 ways that mainstream career advice actually discriminates against the minority job seeker and 3 things that you can actually do about it. Career and job search advice often has the underlying assumption of a level playing field. For anyone who's a member of a minority group, you know the playing field is not level. Just ask Ketanji Brown Jackson. This leads minorities to believe or expect the same outcomes as people who aren't members of minority groups. So a lot of the advice says, do this thing and get this result, but that's problematic because there's so many factors and variables that go into actually achieving that result. There are lots of career coaches and business coaches for that matter out there who will say things like, follow my proven process or this framework and you will get this result. And while those tools can be really, really helpful, they're really, really problematic too. There is rarely a one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to your career or job search. The next time you see a coach sharing testimonials of these people who got amazing results in their job search and 10 job interviews, go ahead and congratulate them and then move on. Because guess what? Those folks who got those results just aren't you. We don't know the uniqueness of their situation, what sort of privilege they might have for that matter, and how that led or impacted them to get those kinds of results. Their success, unfortunately, does not predict yours. You are a unique human being, and you should not expect those same results. And honestly, a reputable coach shouldn't be promising you that if you follow their process, program, or framework, you're going to get that same outcome. Career and job search advice shouldn't leave you feeling like there is something wrong with you. A lot of coaches and a lot of the advice online will say, write a good resume and you'll get the interview, and follow this exact process to write a great resume and you're going to get this outcome. And that's simply not true. You could have the best resume submitted to that job application and still get screened out of the process. If you have a black sounding name, for example, you're about 2 times more likely to get screened out of the process and not even land an interview. This has nothing to do with the quality of your experience, background, or your resume, and everything to do with bias. And this bias is deeply embedded into recruitment systems. There are lots of studies and data that support this. I did a short video about this topic, and I'll link to that in the description. A good resume, a great resume even, does not guarantee that you're going to get a job interview, especially if you're a minority candidate with a non-North American sounding name. A lot of job search and career advice actually ignores the weird stuff that happens to you as a minority. There are weird things that happen to underrepresented minority job seekers that don't necessarily happen to others. For example, a minority job seeker might have had this experience. You walk into an interview as a Black candidate, and you know from like the vibe, energy, or stares in the room that you are not what the hiring manager was expected. It's very difficult to articulate, but you know that something is off in the whole situation, and you get screened out. You get screened out because you didn't live up to what their expectation of what that ideal candidate was. And what's worse is you actually feel completely screened out of the process before you even say a word in the job interview. There are challenges, like endless challenges like this, that are faced by more minority job seekers that often aren't addressed in a lot of the more like mainstream career advice. And that's a problem. Have you ever felt misled by any of the career or job search advice that you've consumed online? If you have, comment misled. There are things that you can do as a minority job seeker to actually start to combat some of that bad advice. Here are 3 things that you can do to take back control in this situation. Take the good advice, but be a bit of a skeptic too. The resume tips, the interview guidance, there's tons of useful stuff out there. There's templates, there's interview frameworks. Take it, use it, apply it, and learn from it. But instead of expecting a certain outcome or saying like something doesn't feel quite right for me, really own that. If something doesn't feel quite right, or you feel like a piece of advice you're consuming doesn't consider the complexity of your situation, that is true and that is real. So give yourself the power back to say, this isn't right for me. When you search for job search, career advice, or anything for that matter, you'll notice the top of search results. And often those first few search results have a really similar look, feel in terms of the persona. Don't click that first search result. Instead, scroll down a little bit and find a minority. Find someone who is a member of an underrepresented group and watch their video or consume their content instead. This does a couple of things. One, it gets you a different perspective on things. And 2, it gives that creator an opportunity to be seen. They'll appreciate the views. Stop expecting the same outcomes as everyone else. The career coaching space and, well, business in general really doesn't a lot of the times recognize the full complexity of like being human yet. So please give yourself permission to deviate from frameworks and processes. Ignore the testimonials if they make you feel bad. You are a whole person with your own unique challenges and lived experiences in your life and in your job search. Don't fall into the trap of ignoring them and thinking that there's something wrong with you, when in fact there's something wrong with not acknowledging those unique challenges that you face. Own who you are and stop trying to fit in to some sort of generic framework, because you are not generic. So Emmanuel, he couldn't get that job interview, right? He was consistently going and searching on career advice and getting generic frameworks and processes and following them. And as a result, he got a great looking resume, but he started to feel really, really bad about himself because he was expecting outcomes that weren't necessarily built around someone who had his same background or lived experience. Emmanuel was a newcomer to a small community. And what in fact seemed to have been happening was that he was facing a lot of bias in the job search and getting screened out before he even got to the interview phase of the process. Emmanuel's a smart guy. He's nice. He's an optimist. He didn't want to consider that this was something that was happening to him. He liked his new community. It felt very welcoming. So it was shocking to think that something like this could be sort of running below the surface. None of the advice that Emmanuel reviewed online talked about the whole idea of bias and discrimination in hiring. So it really hadn't crossed his mind, nor did he ever try to think of ways to kind of work to combat this. His confidence consistently declined and declined. He thought, it must be me, it's gotta be my fault. He reached out to other folks that he knew in the community, and he learned that he was not the only one having this experience as a newcomer and a minority. And through this, he was able to uncover, okay, yeah, maybe this is what I'm up against in my job search process. And he was able to come up with some tactics to work around it and ultimately land an interview. Other minorities shared experiences of discrimination and bias in their job search. And they said, hey, Emmanuel, this could be, in fact, what is happening to you. And that's all he needed. He stopped holding himself to the standard of the mainstream of follow the framework, get the results. His confidence improved, and that interview ultimately turned into a job. Yay, Emmanuel! If you're a minority who values diversity and inclusion, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and peace out.